The first thing I noticed was his laugh. Not the music, not the beer spilling down someone's shirt, not even the girl dancing barefoot on the tablight was him. And the stupid thing is, I didn't even know his name before I was already in too deep. "You're staring," my roommate muttered, elbowing me with a grin. He wasn't wrong. The man across the crowded backyard party looked like he had wandered in from another world. His posture was too straight, his expression too controlled, as though he had never belonged in the chaos of college parties. Yet when he finally lifted his glass to his lips and caught me looking, there was a flicker, something unspoken, something dangerous. I don't know what possessed me to cross the lawn. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was my reckless heart, maybe it was that I had grown sick of people who played it safe. I wanted to touch the fire even if it burned. "You look miserable," I said when I reached him. His brows rose, sharply cut, like I had surprised him with a slap. Then, slowly, the corners of his mouth softened. "And you look too curious for your own good." We talked. God, we talked for hours about books, about music, about why he hated cheap beer and why I couldn't stop drinking it. He didn't flirt, not exactly. But the way his eyes lingered on my lips, the way his hand brushed mine when he handed me his glass, it was enough to make my heart thud against my ribs like it wanted out. At some point, the music blurred into background noise. It was just him and me, standing too close under strings of dim lights, like the universe had narrowed itself down to a secret too fragile to touch. And then he did touch me. Just a hand, fingers sliding over my wrist as he leaned in to say something, his breath warm against my ear. I don't even remember the words. I only remember wanting to stop time right there. But of course, time doesn't stop. By the end of the night, I didn't have his number. I didn't even have his last name. All I had was the memory of his laugh, the burn of his touch, and the wild, foolish hope that maybe I'd see him again. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. The very next morning, I walked into my literature class still half asleep, notebook in hand, when I heard a familiar voice, calm, firm, and devastatingly recognizable. "Take your seats," he said, and when I looked up, there he was, standing at the front of the classroom in a dark blazer, his sharp eyes sweeping over the room like he owned it, like he owned me, Professor Alexander Hayes. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. The stranger from last night, the one whose hand I wanted to hold, whose mouth I wanted to kiss, was my professor. "Holy shit," I whispered, too loud. The girl beside me shot me a look. His gaze flicked toward me, and for one brief second, his lips parted in something like shock. But just as quickly, he masked it, face tightening into professional coldness. "Silence," he said. "This is not a playground. If you're here to waste time, you're in the wrong class." I shrank in my seat, my face burning. He wasn't going to acknowledge me. Not the party, not the way we had stood so close, not the almost that had buzzed between us all night. And yet he couldn't look away. Over the next week, I told myself to forget him. He was my professor. He was untouchable. End of story. But every time he walked past my desk, I felt that spark again. Every time his eyes lingered a moment too long, I knew he felt it too. He might hide behind his authority, behind the stiff walls of academia, but I remembered the man at the party, the man who had laughed with me, who had brushed my hand, who had looked like he wanted me just as much as I wanted him. One evening, I stayed after class under the excuse of asking about an essay. The lecture hall was empty, sunlight fading through the tall windows. "You should go," he said, packing up his notes without looking at me. "I don't want to." My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Do you?" That made him stop. His hand froze mid-motion, knuckles pale against the edge of the desk. When he finally looked at me, it wasn't my professor staring back. It was the man from the party, the man whose laugh had wrecked me. "You don't understand what this could cost," he said, voice low, rough. "Then explain it to me," I whispered. For a moment, he looked like he might step closer, like he might admit that the fire between us was real and dangerous and worth the risk. But then he turned away. "You need to leave, Daniel." Hearing my name in his mouth soft, almost broken, was worse than rejection. Because it wasn't indifference. It was struggle. And that meant maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one losing sleep over this. That night, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head: the warmth of his hand, the steel in his voice, the way he said my name like it was a secret. I should have hated him for pushing me away, but all I felt was the sharp ache of wanting him more. Because here's the thing no one tells you: forbidden doesn't kill desire, it feeds it, and I was already starving. The night of the midterm celebration was when everything finally broke. The campus was buzzing with students ready to drown their stress in neon lights and loud music. I shouldn't have gone, but my roommate dragged me along. And when I walked into that crowded bar, my chest went tight, because there he was, Alexander Hayes, not in a suit, not behind a podium, but leaning against the bar in a black shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking more like the man I had met at the first party than the professor who tortured me with assignments. I tried to walk past him, but he caught my wrist, the same way he had done weeks ago. "We can't keep doing this," he murmured, eyes locked on mine, yet his grip said otherwise. "Then stop holding on." I shot back, but neither of us moved. The music thudded around us, yet it felt like silence. His thumb brushed my skin in accident, a betrayal, a confession all at once. I don't remember leaning in, I just remember the heat of his breath, the brief press of his forehead against mine like he was begging himself not to fall. "I'm not made to be reckless," he said, voice trembling. "Then let me be reckless for both of us," I whispered. And this time he didn't pull away. His lips crashed into mine, desperate and hungry, and everything we had denied ourselves for too long. The world spun, the bar disappeared, and for the first time, I felt what it meant to be wanted without restraint. But passion doesn't erase consequences. The next morning, I woke up in his apartment. Not in his bed, had insisted I take the couch, but still, surrounded by his books, his world, his quiet. He sat across from me with a mug of coffee, dark circles beneath his eyes. "This can't happen again," he said, even though his gaze lingered on my mouth. I laughed bitterly. "You've said that so many times, Professor. And yet," I gestured between us. "Here we are." His jaw tightened. "I could lose everything." "And what about me?" I snapped. "Do you think this is easy for me? I didn't choose this either. But I can't," my voice cracked. "I can't unfeel it." Silence. The kind that stretches and hurts. Finally, he sighed and whispered, "Neither can I." That was the first time I realized he was just as trapped as I was, not by rules, but by his own fear of being human. The semester dragged on, a battlefield of stolen glances, quiet arguments, and nights where I dreamed of him but woke up alone. I thought maybe that was our fate. A story written in longing but never allowed to bloom. Then came the day of my final presentation. I stood in front of the class, my essay on love in American literature clutched in my hands. My voice shook, not because of the audience, but because of him. Because every word I spoke about forbidden love, about the courage it took to choose desire over fear, was really about us. When I finished, the room clapped politely. But Professor Hayes just stared at me, unreadable. After class, he asked me to stay behind. My heart thundered. "You meant every word," he said quietly. "Yes." I didn't hesitate. "And so do you. You just won't admit it." Something broke in his eyes then. He crossed the space between us, faster than I expected, his hands gripping my shoulders. "You think I don't want this?" His voice cracked. "You think I don't lie awake at night wishing I could be selfish? Then be selfish," I pleaded. For a moment, time held its breath. Then he kissed me softer than before, but deeper, truer. It wasn't hunger this time. It was surrender. Months later, when the semester ended, when grades were submitted and lines of authority blurred into memory, we met again, this time not as student and professor, but as two men who had finally stopped running. We walked along the Charles River in early summer, the city glowing gold against the water. He reached for my hand. Not a brush, not a fleeting touch, but a firm hold, out in the open where anyone could see. "You know," he said, smiling faintly, "the night I met you at that party, I told myself you were dangerous." I laughed. You were right. But you were also the only thing that made me feel alive again. His thumb stroked my knuckles. And I don't want to give that up. The fear wasn't gone. The world was still complicated. And love was still a risk. But when I looked at him, his sternness melted into warmth. His guarded heart finally mine. I knew it was worth it. Maybe we weren't supposed to meet the way we did. Maybe it was messy, maybe it was wrong in the eyes of some. But to me it was fate. And as he kissed me under the fading light of the American sky, I realized that sometimes the rules we break are the only path to the happiness we deserve. Because I didn't just fall for a stranger at a party. I fell for the man who taught me that love, in all its terrifying beauty, is the bravest lesson of all. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.